So I'm on a side street somewhere in Philadelphia, and I was gonna wait till I got home to talk about this, but no, I need to talk about this now because this is a movie I knew existed, but the guy going by on a scooter. Again, never know what you're gonna see on a side street. 1977, The Dragon Lives Again. I knew of this movie. I had never seen it before. I went to a Bruceploitation double feature tonight, and that was the second feature. How best to explain this movie? Bruce Leong, who's one of the clones of Bruce Lee, one of the Bruceploitation ripoffs, he, if I told you, do you want to see a movie where Bruce Lee wakes up in the underworld and teams up with the one-armed swordsman from the Shaw Brothers, Kung Fu from the TV show Kung Fu, and Popeye to take on Dracula, mummies, skeletons, who all sound like Snarf from Thundercats, Emmanuel, who else? Dracula, mummies, skeletons, The Godfather, The Exorcist, Zatoichi. It's fucking crazy. The whole thing is fucking crazy. It's like the Robin Williams movie, What Dreams May Come, but with a blatant disregard for international copyright law. I don't. It ends like Grease. Yeah, Bruce Lee dies. Bruce Lee wakes up in the afterlife. And the king of the underworld thinks that he has a giant dick. A huge chunk of this movie is about Bruce Lee having a giant cock. But it turns out it's nunchucks. And the king is like, how dare you bring a weapon into my throne? Get out of here, you Bruce Lee. So Bruce Lee gets out of there, and he goes to a bar where Kung Fu and Popeye are having a drink, and he runs afoul of Zatoichi, the blind swordsman, and the king like causes an earthquake by like rubbing like a pillar. So Asian Gandalf and his two daughters save Bruce Lee. And he's like, hey, I'm gonna stay here and teach you guys how to not gamble and not drink. And I can't have sex because I cheated on my wife when I was alive. Yeah, that's a real fucking scene in the movie. They just stop what they're doing so he can Twitter poll. They just stop what they're doing so he can say, I'm sorry, Linda. Linda being his Bruce Lee's real wife while he's alive. So bizarre. And then The Godfather, The Exorcist, James Bond, Zatoichi, Emmanuel, with the skeletons all hanging out behind them, are like, let's have a drink. We're going to overthrow the king of the underworld, and then we'll be in charge here. And if Bruce Lee doesn't like it, we'll sick Dracula on him. And Bruce Lee doesn't like it, so one by one he fights everybody. He fights Zatoichi, and then every time they do a different move, they call out what the move is, and then it's subtitled underneath of it. So it's always for Zatoichi, it's always blind something, like blind dog pissing or whatever. And then all of Bruce Lee's fights are just his movie titles. He takes him out. James Bond goes out like a chump while fighting him with a briefcase or with a suitcase that's full of money. He takes out Clint Eastwood, and Clint Eastwood's like, bury me in Mexico. And then Dracula shows up, and he fights Dracula. And the Exorcist and the Godfather are like, I know how we'll trick the king. We'll turn his wives ugly because they're shapeshifters and they won't have sex. Bruce Lee won't have sex with them. After they have like this weird scene where the king is in like a little hot tub, blindfolded and chasing these naked, topless Asian women around, and he's like, I know I haven't wanted to have sex with you recently, but I've been really like, worried about my kingdom. And the ladies are like, that's all right. We heard Bruce Lee has a giant cock. So they shapeshift, and he doesn't want them, so they drink like a potion that's supposed to make him like last longer in bed, but instead it like puts them in blackface. Yes, this is all a thing that happens. Everybody's dead, and the Exorcist and the Godfather are like, well, we better go fight Bruce Lee then. And then occasionally they'll be fighting on this like little town set that they have. But then other times they're like out where like Captain Kirk fought the Gorn. And the scenes go on way too long. There's way too much fighting going on, if that's possible in this kind of movie. And it just goes and goes and goes. But it's so insane. And when Emmanuel tries to take over the king's palace by becoming his new bride, and the king can only have sex for so long because he has a bad heart, and there's a dude who's keeping track with it, the thrusts with an abacus, but then it's going on too much, so he switches to a calculator. And then when Bruce Lee shows up dressed as Kato, and he's like, hey, the Godfather and the Exorcist and Emmanuel were trying to take your kingdom over, and then the king goes, I should have known Emmanuel's pussy was part of this plan. The king no longer, for some reason, trusts Bruce Lee, so he goes, I don't want to be the king anymore, and finds this dude who kind of looks like a monkey man, and he's like, hey, can you take care of Bruce Lee for me? So he's like, oh yeah, I'll just fucking get some mummies. So then some mummies start fighting Bruce Lee, but he's injured now. So Popeye, the one-armed swordsman, and Kung Fu show back up, who haven't been in the movie for like an hour. Popeye eats his spinach. Everybody fights, and then when everybody's dead, the king's like, well, I'm gonna get rid of you, Bruce Lee. And then all the townspeople show up, and he's like, all right, I quit, I'm done. Bruce Lee, you win, you can be the king. And he's like, I don't want to be the king, I want to go back to Earth. And he's like, all right, you can go back to Earth. And then like the king just kind of like yeets Bruce Lee into the air, and then a dummy just flies off into the thing, and then it's just a crane shot of everyone waving goodbye, like the end of fucking Grease. It was, there was a couple times where I was like, are we watching a movie, or is there a gas leak in here somewhere? It's fucking crazy. You know, talk about a cinematic universe before Marvel was doing it. Yeah, I'd heard about this movie. I just like, oh yeah, Popeye and James Bond and Dracula fight Bruce Lee, and I was like, oh well, that's fun. And then I saw it, and I was like, this is fucking madness. Like this is absolute fucking insanity. It was obviously made to be an action kung fu comedy. You know, before Jackie Chan was like a bigger thing. Our main Bruce Lee doesn't look as much like Bruce Lee. He sort of looks more like Bolo Young. But yeah, this was too long, but fuck, this was fucking funny. You know, there's a lot of similarities you can see of like Power Rangers, like the skeletons sort of look like the putties at times, and the sounds they're making. And just the fucking audacity of these producers to be like, oh yeah, The Exorcist with a French accent, The Godfather, Emmanuel, you know, Popeye, yeah, they're all together in the afterlife for some reason. I'm surprised Jaws wasn't in it, just because, you know, and not the James Bond Jaws, since James Bond was already in it, but I was like, if they're already going for all the big 70s movie things that were popular in the West to bring over to the East, they should have put Jaws in there as well. I could see Bruce Leong fighting a shark. Yeah, this was madness. This was a lot to process. So, I don't know where to find this movie. I think American Genre Films put it out. But if you get a chance to check this out, it's fucking crazy. Just tell people the characters who are in it that Bruce Lee fights, and they'll be like, why are we not fucking watching this right now? So yeah, that's my recommendation for something that I saw tonight that I had heard of, and I never really thought I would see it, but that was nuts. That was fucking crazy, and I'm glad I saw it, and I think that you all should see it too, because I fucking laughed my ass off at some of the lines, and some of the set pieces and the action scenes, and it was just I haven't seen this kind of batshit insanity in an exploitation movie in a while, because you know, I've seen so much shit over the years, and seeing this with a crowd was pretty funny. You know, and the amazing shots of the power of editing and fight scenes and stuff like that. It was pretty fucking good. So if you get a chance, The Dragon Lives Again, and the story, the legend of Bruce Lee having a giant cock, and Dracula whose makeup they didn't even bother finishing, and the amount of times that the mummies like adjust their heads, so their masks, so that they can see while in their fight scenes, and I got nothing, man. This is one of those movies that I was just fucking speechless for. So yeah, that's my recommendation.